Welcome in, everybody, to a special Warchant.com report for National Signing Day, the early signing period, to be more specific, for college basketball. This is a big day for Florida State basketball and for Luke Laux on the heels of a really nice performance on the road last night against the Florida Gators. He's Matt LaSerre, staff reporter, recruiting analyst here for Warchant.com, and the person who came up with the concepts from head to toe for today's programming, which is going to feature insights from national reporters, local insights. Matt's going to give you the lowdown on all things Florida State basketball, as Luke Laux' first official class as the head coach at Florida State is extremely impressive. Matt, want to say thank you for all the hard work. Tell people how it all came together and what your concept was for covering today's events as FSU basketball looks to sign its 2026 class.
Yeah, I personally just didn't realize that early basketball signing day was even today until a couple weeks ago. And I was like, oh, this is their best class in a while. You'll see when we talk to Ira, we kind of compared to what that last best class could have been. But, we probably need to do a big thing for this, right? I mean, everyone's excited. Basketball's looking good. People are starting to support on the court. And it was good to see this class actually come together. And also for the fans, it's good to see guys follow through on signing day. And we don't have a heart attack for this program. So it's altogether fun. But yeah, I just figured it's a good time for everyone to look at this hoops class. And one big thing, we've done little videos as they committed, but the problem was there was so much going on at those times, right? Like the Marcus Ponder committed right in the middle of the coach's luncheon, like literally right in the middle of it. So there's been so much content going around that it's good to have one day just for this basketball signing class and to really go over a really impressive first class from Luke Laux.
You're going to catch an interview with Matt conducted by Jeff Cameron in just a moment here, in which Matt goes through each of those individual players and their stories, how Florida State landed those players. The circumstances aren't identical in each case for how Florida State came to secure signatures. And then you're going to get insights from Jamie Shaw, national analyst, Rivals. Ira Schoffel and Matt conducted an interview as well, discussing implications on the local front for Florida State and how this compares to an excellent recruiting class that Florida State turned in 10 years ago. And in the early part of Leonard Hamilton's days, when Florida State was a bit of a force on the recruiting trail. And then finally, Joe Tipton, also another interview with On3 Rivals graphics guy. But as you know, with Hayes Fawcett and Joe Tipton, these aren't just dudes who whip up personal edits for players. They gain intel. They learn things about each of their individuals.
They know everything. They know everything. Exactly. They just can't tell us it.
That is correct. They're the Rolodex in their phone. They probably have 2 or 3 separate phones for different projects because they have so many names that they put together. Matt conducted all these interviews. He's the executive producer of this program. He directed this project. So make sure you hit the like button underneath this video to give him a round of applause, as you're going to get smarter about Florida State basketball today. Matt, before we get into your interview with Jeff, is there anything people should know about what they're about to watch or listen to over the better part of the next hour?
Yeah, it's just fun to see this class come together. It's something that since Laux got on campus, I've gotten the chance to cover. We obviously hadn't covered much basketball recruiting in the past under Ham, but with this new young staff, it's been fun to watch them go through it and watch Laux and Fly and Gillian and Moran really build this class. And Kent played a part in recruiting some guys too. So it's fun to watch it again. Like, this is a big deal to get this caliber of a recruiting class in here. It's something we haven't seen in a while. And, there's a reason to be excited for FSU basketball again. And personally, like that COVID year that season got canceled was my freshman year of college. And that was the last time I was this excited about basketball as I am, just even for this season and now beyond that. So have fun, learn about the future of this Florida State program. And because these are the building blocks for the Laux era at FSU. So I think it starts with Kim Miles and Basong, who are on the team right now. And then you add these guys onto that, and it's going to be fun.
It's already a fun team to watch, and let's understand how it's going to get better. We start now with Jeff Cameron's interview with Matt, followed by interviews in sequence right after that.
Let's bring him in right now. It's early signing day for Florida State basketball, and we're all excited about this. Matt, the last time we talked about these individuals, these players that we're going to gloss over here, we were both, or at least I was in shock, and the way I asked you the questions was, how are they doing this? Because these are big-time players that they expect to get yeses from today, and it seems to me that that's got the juices flowing for Florida State fans, realizing that perhaps a bit of the cavalry is on the way. Do we anticipate today that all is well still with all 3 of these guys?
Yeah, as of now, I expect there's going to be one. The first one will probably be Brandon Bass Jr. Their ceremony's at 3:30. The rest, I'm not sure on the times yet. Obviously, since this is pre-recorded, they could have already signed already, but as of now, we're not really sure. But we do expect all three to sign with Florida State today. The fourth being Jason Lopez is a football recruit, so he's expected to sign on football signing day since all of his NIL scholarship is all through them. But your main three important ones, Brandon Bass Jr., Marcus Ponder, and Colin Paul will all be signing that dotted line today, which is huge.
Centers are always sexy. Most people would want me to start with that. I'm not going to start with that. I'm going to start with the guy you mentioned first, Brandon Bass Jr. For people who don't know, this is a young man that was heavily recruited by Purdue. That's right, Purdue. And Florida State looks to get a yes today from him. That's an amazing accomplishment for Luke Glauks, Michael Fly, the rest of this staff, if it happens. Give us the lowdown on that young man and your expectation of what he's going to be for Florida State.
Yeah, not only did they beat out Purdue, who obviously was in the national championship only a couple years ago and has made it to at least Sweet 16 like last 3 out of 4 years, but they also beat his dad's alma mater, Brandon Bass Sr.'s NBA stars, LSU. So it was out of all the recruitments, that was the one where it was truly a head-to-head battle, right? Marcus Ponder was like, you had the assistant coach's brother and all that kind of stuff. We'll go into more in that a little bit, I'm sure. But this was the one where they really went head-to-head with some powers and won out. Obviously, Brandon Bass Sr., NBA guy. Luke did not know him when he was in the NBA. Their paths didn't really cross at all. But once they started talking through this recruitment, they realized they had a lot of mutual friends. Obviously, NBA circles run pretty tight. There's not many people who have NBA jobs or played in the NBA. So that helped a lot in this one. And then also Windermere Prep head coach, Coach Hoff, played at Florida State with Luke. And that was a huge connection here too, obviously. So a lot of familiar stuff went on in this recruitment. From what I heard is one of the first recruiting trips that Laux made around the state to Orlando. It was of this big dinner with the Bass family himself. I believe Hoff was there as well. And they ate dinner and it lasted like 3 hours and it was great conversation. And that kind of hit it off in this recruitment. That's what set the tone. And Florida State ended up winning out in the end after that visit for the Alabama game. And as we go on for, a lot of stuff, but it worked out really well. But he's going to be a really good player for him.
He's 6'4", off guard, right? That's kind of what he is. Yeah. Look, with that skill set, with Dad's skill set, I mean, obviously everybody was very, very excited. When you're recruited by the names on the list that you just alluded to, obviously you're talking about an elite player. And for Florida State to get an elite player ranked where he is, right off the bat, you can see the effectiveness of those recruiting pitches. Being a former NBA guy, Luke is really connecting with people about the idea of getting people to the league and training people in that way. You and I have discussed that. It resonated with Brandon Bass. It also resonated with Marcus Ponder. Marcus Ponder is a giant. You've stood next to him. I've stood next to him. Well, maybe not right next to him, but we've been in the same building at the practices. We've seen him. He's a true giant. And Florida State right now, in watching the game last night, it's pretty evident. They're going to have some issues with the bigger front courts that they face. But help is on the way, and in a big way, in the form of Marcus Ponder, who is nicknamed Baby Shaq. That's all you really need to know. I mean, this is that kind of size. Florida State will hold their own for a year, but they're going to be getting a guy that will do more than that when he arrives. Marcus Ponder, we think, still a go, right?
Yep, still a go. Nothing to show he's not. He actually posted on his Instagram story yesterday a countdown clock to signing day with him, all the pictures in the uniform. So doesn't look like any wavering or any funny business happening there. But yeah, I mean, I think you would agree with me on this. That kid's a day one starter, man. Like there's no way he's not. It's a hole that needs to be filled, especially look, you saw they could hold their own against teams like that are much bigger than them, like with UF. But still look at that rebound differential. That comes down to size and mainly size only. They fought for him, but it's just too hard. And that's a hole that they need plugged. But as you said, and Marcus Ponder is going to be perfect for that. And just his athleticism. He's actually also lost a lot of weight recently. He was up above 300 pounds at one point, and now he's listed at 275. And I think that's going to help him play in this fast system, right? Like you can't have you can have big dudes, but you can't have a huge dude running up and down the court like that. Like that, those just don't mix, right? Like you're not having an offensive lineman run around all the time. So he slimmed down, and I think that's going to help him. But he's also played in the fast system at Gillian Academy for a few years now, and West Oaks. So he's used to that fast pace, and I think he's a perfect fit.
Well, I think, what's fun, Matt, is talking about it as we try to frame who this kid is for people who haven't seen him and are kind of wondering about body types. When it comes to bigs, it is very rare to find guys who are of that size, 6'11", 275, as he's slimmed down now, down under 300 pounds, that look athletic, that are comfortable in their body. Early on in careers, you'll see guys that are effective solely because they alter shots at their size. They're long. They can rebound almost by default because of that size. There's a difference between a guy like that and a guy like Marcus Ponder, who has good footwork, who is athletic, who is a guy who's comfortable in his own body already at this age, a guy who, as we know from watching the highlights, likes to dunk on people, wants to thunder on your head, is a guy who is attacking because he's not awkward, right?
Yeah, he's called Baby Shaq for a reason, right? I mean, it's different because you're a lot older than me. I think of Shaq as this big fat guy on TV now. I never got to see him when he was that slim like Marcus Ponder is. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen the highlights, so it's a lot like that, the way being able to do it all. Like he's a perfect fit for this system, in my opinion, and the connections also really helped here with, I mentioned it, assistant coach Gerald Gillian's brother, Kenny Gillian, is his high school head coach. And just from talking to people in the program, that was a guy who was brought up day one, like when they got on campus, was probably their number one priority recruiting-wise, high school recruiting-wise, the second Laux got the job and the second Gillian was hired on. And they clearly made a priority. It was their first major commitment, and that's going to be their biggest one in this class too.
Yeah,
no pun intended.
You talk about you talk about jaded. I'm so jaded that the first practice I went to, I'm sitting there talking to Michael Fly. I don't really know him very well. We're getting to know each other a little bit, and I'm like, "Come on, man. There's no chance we're getting this guy." I'm like, "Who are we kidding? You're not getting a center that Kansas wanted." You're not, you know what I mean? Like, Kansas wants Marcus Ponder, amongst many others. I'm like, you're not getting that guy. And he's like, oh, no, we got him. He's coming. He just unequivocally, he's like, oh, no, he's coming. Don't worry about it, Jeff. We got him. I was like, man, it would be so refreshing to juxtapose if it happens today. And like we said, Matt and I had to pre-record this segment for the purposes of scheduling today. So we're going to presume that this all plays out the way that we wanted it to, and it may have already. But something to note here, and I'm not trying to take shots, it's just the reality. Won't it be something that the 4- and 5-star kids that you got verbals from previous actually follow through on signing and say yes? Because Lord knows another program that we cover carefully has had a real hard time closing the deal on those caliber players.
Yeah, it's a lot different in basketball, I guess is the way to say it. You don't get a lot of these flip-flopping and all that kind of stuff that football does. Now, eventually, will that happen? Probably, because there's money thrown around everywhere in every sport now. But it is refreshing to be able to close out and to be able to get to this point. And also, I didn't even realize basketball signing day was this early until a couple weeks ago. It's good to get them in the fold right now. And now you don't have to worry about it. You move on to the next cycle now, and you can keep recruiting. By the way, they've already been recruiting for the next cycle. They've had multiple kids on campus for football games the last few months. So they're in a good, like, they're not showing to be slowing down in this recruiting thing. And I think Laux is proven to be really good at it. He hired the right people like Fly, Gillian, to be really good at it. But also, we forget, and I remember when Ira did his roundtable thing when he first got hired, he was in medical sales before he even was a coach or went back to playing professionally. So why didn't we think this guy was going to be good at recruiting when he was good at his job as a salesman before, but in between basketball, right? So it's really good to see. And I think Laux is going to continue to be good as he gets pushed in the right direction by Fly, Gillian, and all his other assistant coaches.
Well, I think it's a good point to make here is that he's incredibly charismatic, but you go from, just to highlight what you said. So if you're in medical sales, you might believe in the product or you might not. You have a job to try to obviously sell it. He 100% believes everything that he
100%.
is trying to teach and sell to these kids in his pitch because he's seen it work. He's of that place, professional basketball. He was in a professional organization that is the envy of the sport at Golden State. He then moved upwards on the bench as a coach, eventually in Sacramento. This is a guy who was the head coach of a summer league in the NBA where you got real dudes going to war with each other. So this is an easy thing for him to sit down, I think, and pitch, because it's not some other product that I'm now representing.
Yeah.
It's a product that
100%.
I was part of, right?
Yeah, and you're going to have like guys like De'Aaron Fox that he's super close with that might even come train in Tallahassee in the offseason.
Right.
Like, can you imagine having to walk into your facility one day when you're going through preseason workouts? Oh, but you can shoot around with De'Aaron Fox. Maybe Steph Curry comes. I mean, we all saw the video of him showing off and Steph Curry FaceTiming him at ACC tip-off media days, whatever it's called. So, yeah, I mean, these kids love these connections, man. Like when you can pull up Steph Curry on the phone or any of these guys, it obviously helps. And I got to see Luke's new office set up the other day. He's got those signed jerseys. He's got Steph Curry that says "For Luke." Like he's got them all out there for everyone to see.
You're damn right. You got to use what you got, buddy. Yeah, man. If I was friends with Steph and De'Aaron Fox and these guys, yeah. I'm like,
you wouldn't hear the end of it from me if I was. I'd be like, yeah, I talked to him the other day. And
the other day, I'm sorry I couldn't get back to you. I was on the phone with Klay Thompson for an hour. He just wouldn't stop talking. It was forever and a day. All right, one last guy, Colin Paul. Another superstar we haven't talked about yet, right?
So this was it was kind of a weird one. This was 100% a Michael Fly recruitment. So it started off, he offered him at Jacksonville University when he was there a few months ago. And he was consistent and kind of recruited him like if he was at a major power school. Now, realistically, was the kid ever going to Jacksonville just because Michael Fly's there? Probably not. But Michael Fly moves to Florida State, moves to a Power 4 program. In my opinion, that changed this whole recruitment, right? Fly already had the connection. He had built that up over probably a few years by now. But now you're at a major school. Now, on paper, the only school they beat out for him was Loyola Chicago. I know it doesn't sound great, but that was the only place he took an official visit to. But you had Miami, you had Georgetown, you had other major programs in talks with him. Just the relationship with Fly here was so strong that it didn't mean anything. That he took that visit to the Alabama game, the Alabama football game a few months ago, and that was it for him. That's when they went on that string of commitments, which, by the way, I think they went 3 for 4 out of the guys who visited that weekend or something like that. Like the hit rate on that official visit was insane, and they finished second for the last one in Kevin Thomas. So the recruiting right now for Luke Laux is insane.
Yeah, Luke probably looking over at that football team saying, thanks for the help back then. Can we get it together here?
Yeah.
Every coach in Florida State that I've ever talked to, from golf to volleyball to tennis to basketball, will tell you that everybody recruits better for every sport if football doesn't suck. Sorry, I keep coming back to that. Anyhow, those are the big three right now. We're excited about those players. Matt, thanks for everything you do to cover for Warchant. Be well, brother. We'll talk again real soon.
All right, guys. Next segment on today's signing day special, we have On3 Rivals national recruiting reporter. He also evaluates and does the rankings for us. Jamie Shaw. Jamie, thank you for taking the time to come on. I know it's a busy time for you right now.
Yeah, Matt. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the work that you guys do and everything too. Great. You're a great follow as well. So way to be on top of things, man. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I guess thank you. We'll jump straight into it. I guess we'll start off with kind of the first big domino for Florida State in this class, and that was Marcus Ponder, Baby Shaq, as people call him. You, I think, got to see him play only a couple of weeks ago. Can you, before we get into the recruitment itself, can you kind of tell us what is Florida State getting in this big man?
Yeah, so he's a big, strong physical presence. And it's kind of no way around that. It's what you first notice when you see him, how just big he is in every which way. And it's wild to think about just 2 years ago, between then and now, as to how much weight he's lost and the shape that he's gotten into. Really putting his body together and the physicality that he brings. Now, he's able to play within traffic and good hands, and he tries to dunk everything, tear the rim off. And there's just a real physicality factor there as he continues to learn the game. You're able to dump it to him down now on the block, and he can get over that left shoulder. And, there's just a steep developmental curve that he's been on these past, few months. And he continues to show that as he continues to get his stamina together and all of that. There's a factor there that he brings when it comes to the physicality that's just unique among his peers.
Yeah, do you think that weight loss and being able to like do that and develop more, does that just make him fit even better into this Luke Laux style of run as fast as you can down like every possession kind of thing?
Yeah, well, what it brings is somebody who's able to move, but he brings an anchor on the block. You know, especially if you're spreading the floor and you need spacing, and you're trying to go 4-around-1 and do all that stuff. Having somebody that can be an anchor on the block that you know can end possessions with rebounds, or you can even put it down to, and he can try to tear the rim off. Really just helps with the spacing and helps opening things up. So he's kind of an anchor for a system that likes to play the way that Laux likes to play.
Awesome. Then just go to his recruitment a little bit. Where did you see Florida State kind of start trending? Was it right when Luke got hired, or did you think they were kind of around there before then? Just where did his recruitment go to ultimately end with him signing with Florida State?
Yeah, no, I think Florida State was kind of in the mix, you know, all the way around, being the Florida kid down there, you know, the plays for the Gillians and everything in high school. And I think Florida State was just kind of always the team that everybody had their eye on, that they were chasing.
Awesome. And then we'll move on to Colin Paul, a guy from South Florida that Florida State was in on, Calvary Christian. What have you seen from him and just overall his skill set?
Yeah, so Colin's one that was really taken off prior to his injury that he sustained in June. He's a big guy at 6'7" or so, with long arms and a projectable frame that can consistently create advantages, and that's what the game's all about. Kind of at the wing position, having guys on the floor who are versatile positionally, who can also with the ball in hand create advantages. And he was really starting to take off over the past maybe 8 months before June, the June injury, of really getting into his comfort zone, I guess. So I'm going to be very eager to see how he comes back from his injury and what that looks like. But there's a real skill set there, real size, and there's real intrigue with what he could end up being long term. And going into a system like this as well, with the versatility, with the positional fluidity, and all that. You know, he's got a real inside-outside factor to his game as well, where he can line up in multiple spots and be able to utilize the spacing to create one-on-one advantages and you know, go do his thing.
Yeah, we'll get into Brandon Bass a little bit as well too, and his skill set. Obviously, everyone looks. I say Brandon Bass Jr., so no one gets confused, even though I don't think seniors going to college again. So what? Like, I guess when everyone thinks of him, obviously they think of his dad. Is his game at all similar to his dad? Completely different? What do we expect with him?
A complete 180 from his dad. His dad was a big physical presence and a force, and Brandon Jr. is more of a scorer. He's a guy who just knows how to go get buckets. And as he continues to clean up his buckets, there's a high upside there of a guy who can really put the ball through the hole. You know, he's not as tall as his dad, not as big as his dad. He's a true shooting guard with how he plays in that 6'3", 6'4" range. He's got a little bit of pop to his game, great length. But his ability his confidence to create buckets with the ball in his hand and to go score the basketball at multiple levels is very intriguing. And as he continues to put on weight, as he continues to kind of grow into his game, get his balance and footwork together, and really kind of identify on the floor where his shot's going to come from and how he's going to get to those spots on the floor, there's a nice upside there of somebody who's able to really put the ball in the hole.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about his recruitment a little bit, because that was probably out of these three, the one recruitment that Florida State kind of actually beat major programs in, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, it was probably over Purdue and LSU. What led to Florida State really winning out here? Was it just that one visit, or what do you think happened?
Well, I think for me, I think it was they prioritized them, and it was the direction that they showed. The role that they had, and kind of the future that they had in mind as to how he would continue to grow within the program. I think the system that Laux has really opens the floor up and allows for kind of spacing when it comes to that. And I think there's a pathway there. Obviously, Luke's got the NBA ties and all that. There's availability to come in and be able to play. All that kind of involved, checked a lot of boxes to ultimately see Bass come into the mix.
Yeah, then I guess just overall Luke Laux recruiting going, like, just from him being hired to now getting this first cycle under his belt. What were you surprised that he was able to get a kind of class like this, a class that Florida State hasn't really seen in a long time under Coach Ham, that they were able to get these elite recruits in so early?
I think whenever somebody goes from the NBA to college, you never really know if they're going to understand the recruiting landscape. You kind of never really understand if they don't have the ties or they've never been on the path before as to what it does. Well, Luke came in and was aggressive. He was front and center for these games, watching these guys play. He was hands-on in the recruitment process, and he and his staff were able to identify guys that fit what they wanted to do and really lay out so that these players can visualize, utilize relationships and stuff in the industry, and really help these guys visualize as to what their pathway was, what their plan was moving forward. There seems to be a little bit of excitement surrounding the program. And it seemed that Luke was able to identify the players that he wanted and really just kind of go after those guys. There wasn't really a huge net that was cast. It didn't feel like within this class, but they were able to utilize some relationships that they had previously, and they were able to go out and identify guys that fit and really sell their program and the vision that they had within their program for what they wanted in this class, and got it done pretty quickly and seamlessly.
Yeah, I've talked to you a little bit about this over text, but it seems like with the new staffs at Miami and Florida State that there's going to finally be a lot of big Florida recruiting battles in the future with these kids. How excited are you? I guess there wasn't a whole lot of it with these three in this class, but down the road to 27, 28, how excited are you to see that again? And how good is that just for the state of basketball, state of Florida basketball, maybe?
Well, it's good because, as I'm putting these rankings together and all that, every single class, every single cycle, Florida is one of the top 2 or 3 producing states within the country when it comes to basketball talent. So for that talent to stay homegrown and to have 3 major universities within the same state that are relevant within the college basketball landscape, but not only that, they're in the mix for these guys. They're in the mix for the players and all that stuff. We just saw a Florida guy with Caleb Gaskins commit to Miami. Florida State's got a couple Florida guys here. I think all 3 of these guys are from Florida that they're getting as well. Yeah. So to see them being able to I was watching a 30 for 30 the other day, and Miami used to do the state of Miami, and all that. So for a school to be able to lock up their backyard, that's huge. That's just absolutely massive to be able to do, and to see 3 schools be relevant within the same state, to be able to recruit the same kids. And that also adds to the rivalry, obviously me being in the Carolinas, other people being in other parts of the state, they don't necessarily get to feel that, but being in the gym and being a part of it and all that, if these guys have known each other since they were 6 years old, playing on same teams and different teams and rivalries, that carries over into college, and you feel that. And especially too, when the students know each other, when the players know each other, when everybody knows each other, they want to win. And that just adds to the rivalry, especially when you have something to play for, 2 top 25 teams, 2 nationally relevant teams coming in to be able to play. It just all adds to it. So it's awesome to see what Jay's doing at Miami. It's awesome to see what Luke's doing, at Florida State. And we know what Ty's doing at Florida. So the state of Florida is in good hands. And a traditional football state, basketball is becoming very, very relevant very, very quickly.
Awesome. And thank you again, Jamie, for coming on with us to kind of celebrate and look at this first class under Luke Laux. Definitely a good one that these fans haven't seen in a while. And like you said, a lot of excitement around this program. So thank you again for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk with us.
Matt, I appreciate it.
All right, keeping it rolling. Not back to another segment here for National Signing Day, Basketball National Signing Day special here on Warchant TV. We bring in the I wanted to say old head, but I think you'd get offended by that a little bit. I
think we're all aware that I'm the old head.
Yeah, so who's been around for a while, covering FSU basketball. He's more locked into current basketball recruiting more than you think as well. Some of the stuff that I post, Ira ends up being my source on it. But to kind of start off, we wanted to go through and how big this class is for Florida State basketball. And go back to maybe when was the last time they even did this? As far as I can find, when me and Nick were talking about it on our show a couple days ago, it might have been 2015 with Dwayne Bacon, Malik Beasley, and Terrence Mann. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a similar class. You're right. There was a few classes early when Leonard Hamilton got here that were kind of a big deal. They signed a few big recruits pretty early. With a guy like Von Wafer and Alexander Johnson were some big-time recruits that Florida State, they probably weren't to this level. Von Wafer probably was. I'd have to go back and look. He was, one of the top players in the country. Alexander Johnson was a big time power forward that a lot of schools really wanted. I don't know if he was probably a 4-star. I don't know if he got up to 5-star with anybody. But yeah, and they had some other decent classes, but usually it would be like, maybe it was a big class of 5 or 6 guys who were all like solid, or maybe you had like Jonathan Isaac, you had like the one big name. But in terms of having like a group of several elite recruits, yeah, that class is the one. And it was on the heels of, it was right before the Jonathan Isaac signing the year after. And it was kind of like Malik Beasley and Bacon and Terrence Mann was kind of the afterthought at the time. But getting those guys in, that kind of, you can make an argument, kind of saved Leonard Hamilton's job, because they were trending in the wrong direction. They hadn't made the tournament in a couple of years. They brought in that class, and then that team didn't make the tournament, but they did have Jonathan Isaac coming in. He was the biggest recruit probably Leonard Hamilton had ever had here. So, yeah, that's definitely a good comparison.
Yeah, and then when Luke got hired, you knew more of his background than anyone else, having covered the team in the past when he played. What, did you think he was going to be this good at recruiting, being able to sign these guys real quick and kind of get rolling as fast as he has?
No, I think he's way surpassed any expectations I had, probably most people had. And that was really my biggest thing. And, I've Luke may or may not know this. I've mentioned it to him before that, I was kind of in the corner of CY, Charlton Young, who was an assistant coach under Leonard Hamilton. Because of that reason, CY was the guy that kind of was the driving force behind getting that class of Beasley and Bacon and Mann and he brought in Devin Vassell and a bunch of those guys that ended up becoming like one and done or elite NBA players. And so that to me is the biggest part of the job. Go get, can you get players? Can you get that level of players? I didn't know if Luke could do it, honestly, but man, he's been so smart about it. And and I'm sure you guys have talked about it, but he's just been so smart about relationships when he put together the staff and, the Coach Gillian and Michael Fly and these guys, they have so many connections that they've really kind of tapped into. And Brian Hoff, who played for him, who coaches one of these guys that they've got coming in as well. He's just done a really good job of he's got connections, even though he hasn't been in the college scene for the last decade or 15 years since he played. But he really has done a great job of tapping into those connections. And then he's selling what he could sell, that NBA experience, the fact that he's been around those elite programs, the Warriors, the Kings, and the Suns. And, it seems to me, you talk to the players, the recruits more than I do, but it seems like they all, that's the first thing they all mention.
Yeah, it is. That's been the biggest, selling point for Florida State this year and it's kind of interesting because it clearly hasn't been money through this first class, the recruiting class. These 3 recruits that came in, I think they had an excess of money that they were able to bring in such a good class to start. But from the guys that they brought in with the portal, money wasn't as huge of a factor as I think we all thought from talking to some people more recently. And I know you have as well. But yeah, I guess we'll go to, you mentioned Coach Fly. What role do you think he's played in this? Just because he's been the guy, we both know he's been the guy on the road traveling, I want to say almost weekly at this point as the new general manager / assistant coach for this team.
Yeah, I think he's been huge. And, and Fly is, and Michael Fly, he was here under Leonard Hamilton. He started off as a videographer and then kind of, he moved his way up and then he ended up becoming head coach at Florida Gulf Coast. And then he was an associate head coach or assistant head coach at Jacksonville University. So he's been in the state for a long time, recruiting, kids at the state. And I think, to your point about the portal, I mean, he was vital in that process, getting in some of these guys, McCray and LeJay Jones, and some of these guys that he had connections with from previously when he was at Jacksonville. But then with this recruiting class, I think he's been a huge part of it. And I also think this new general manager role, we haven't really talked about it too much. I don't know if you've talked about it much on the recruiting show, but I do think, from talking to people around the program, that's going to be a big deal for him and for this program. Because I think, he is still an assistant coach too, but man, he is 100% focused on the general manager part, which is assembling the roster. And he's got connections, he's coached, he's been a head coach, he's been an assistant coach at a lot of schools, very well connected, not just in the state of Florida, but really around the country, definitely in the Southeast. And, again, man, it's basketball recruiting it's kind of, football recruiting is too, but I've always felt like basketball recruiting is so much more about relationships, tapping in. That's what Leonard Hamilton was great at. He had 50 years of relationships that he could tap into. And again, that's why I like CY. I think he had a lot of those qualities too. And I was worried about Luke a little bit because he hadn't been in the college game. He just hadn't been in the college game. But I think that combination of Luke and Coach Moran that's on his staff, and he's and some other guys on his staff that have Coach Kent, I think as well, that have NBA ties or NBA experience, and then you mix that with Fly and Coach Gillian, who've been really, and some other people on the staff that have been in the college game. I think that's really been a good mix.
Yeah, I think Luke even said it on one of the episodes of that show. They do their version of The Climb. I forget what the name of it is. I think it's Day One, maybe. Yeah. And he even said that it's not just him doing it; it's the whole staff. It's a combination of whoever has a connection. You even saw it with recruits they didn't get. Gage Mayfield, Coach Kent was his guy, the one contacting him every day. Fly is the majority of it, I'll say, just from kids who talk to him, and you kind of see that when they come in, talk about the visits. But it's a combination of everybody. If someone has a connection, they'll be the main guy on that kid no matter what. Like Ponder with Gillian. That one, I don't want to say it was the easiest get, but it was the one that looked the most likely coming in just because of that connection right away.
But man, that's the one that to me, and the other kids could be superstars. But I remember when Luke got the job, when he got the job, somebody that knows him reached out to me and sent me a video of Marcus Ponder and said, I think Luke thinks he can get this guy. And I was just like, you've got to be kidding. I mean, you just start watching his film and it's like, man, it's the ferociousness that dude plays with. It's rare to see a 7-footer with that size play with that much effort and just ferociousness. I mean, it's real impressive. So he's the guy I can't wait to see. But yeah, in general, that class is, man, it's Luke, sometimes you don't want to set the bar too high in your first year because now people are going to expect that. I don't know how he's going to match this or supersede it, but he's knocked it out of the park, I think, with his first one.
He can start off with retaining Basong and Cam Miles. I think that's where you start next year. But it's do you think Ponder's a day one starter? Say he keeps not the makeup, so we'll see who comes and goes, but normally he'll just go after a lot of guards, probably the same way he did this year. With that, Ponder's probably a year one starter. Wouldn't you agree?
I think he's going to have a great chance to. Now, it'll be interesting, what they do in the portal. We don't know. They're going to have to make some move in the portal. This senior class, they have this, it's weird that your first year you've got this big senior class, but they had to go out and get a bunch of experienced portal guys to kind of get them through this first season. And so now all those guys are going to be leaving. So maybe you get an experienced, big man out of the portal and maybe Ponder can kind of learn from him. But in terms of just physical ability, there's not going to be a lot of dudes in college basketball that he can't man up physically. It's just a matter of developing the skill to go with it.
Yeah, we'll get into, just to finish it off, get into what you think of the team going right now. This is recorded before the Florida game on Monday. So whatever happened. Probably a loss, but maybe they surprised everybody. And this looks really bad right now coming out on a Wednesday. But how do you think this team is? What do you think their ceiling is? Just what have your thoughts been through the 2 games you've seen so far?
I mean, I think it's been impressive so far. He clearly, when Luke got here, he wanted to go get guys that could shoot. And you could see it on the resumes when, you started looking at the backgrounds of these guys. I mean, they all, LaJay Jones and even Wiggins, but certainly, all the wings, Kobe McGee and McCray and all these guys can shoot. And so, but it's good to do that. And you see it on paper and you're like, okay, well, it's nice that you brought in some guys who can really shoot. But then when you see them on the court together, I think, and you went to a lot more practices than I did. You and Corey went to some practices and scrimmages. I went to 1 or 2. You saw it some in there. But then when you see it in games, it's impressive, man. It puts a lot of stress on the defense when you've got that many guys who defenses have to worry about on the perimeter. Again, you think back to the last few years under Leonard Hamilton where they really couldn't shoot the 3 at all. And so teams could play off of, they could just play off the 3-point. They didn't have to come out and guard anybody. So that really clogged things up, for the guys that they did have some guys that could attack the basket, but teams didn't have to worry about defending the 3. Well, when you've got to get out on all these different shooters, it puts a lot of pressure on the defense. I think you saw it in the game before the Florida game the Alcorn State game, or no, excuse me, Alabama State game, where, they got so many long rebounds because teams are having to extend to play defense, and then you're shooting these threes and they get long rebounds, and it's hard for the defender to box somebody out and then find the ball. And so I think that may end up helping them. And again, people will have seen the Florida game by then, so we'll see how it plays out. But there's a world where, even though Florida's got an incredible size advantage, there's a world where if you're hitting your threes and then you're getting some of those long rebounds, you can kind of negate that huge size advantage Florida has. So, no matter what happened in that game, I still think, there's a lot to like about this team. And I think, on nights when they shoot it well, I think you wrote this in your preview story, on nights when they shoot it well, they're going to be really tough to beat. And if they have nights where they don't shoot it well, they could be in trouble. But the nice thing is you're not relying on just one or two perimeter shooters. They've got a bunch of dudes who can shoot. I mean, guys that come off the bench, they can really shoot. So, you'd like to think that 7 or 8 guys are not going to go in a slump at the same time. And now I've been impressed by them. I think they're going to have some tough nights with teams that have a lot of size, but I definitely like the way he's got a vision, and you can see it playing out.
Yeah, and one quick funny story before we go. When me and Ira are watching the FAMU expedition, the one thing people don't talk about that's pretty new that Luke does differently is he will keep their guys in when they have a couple fouls and let them wear it. I forget who it was in the FAMU expedition who had 3 fouls early, but you turned to me and was like, what the hell's going on? Like, I haven't seen this here in years. But so, yeah, thank you again, Ira, for coming on and taking the time to go back in time, talk old recruiting, and then how you've seen Luke do so far.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
All right, now we bring on national basketball reporter for On3 Rivals, recruiting reporter, Joe Tipton, making his Warchant TV debut today. Joe, thank you for coming on with us to talk some FSU hoops.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so to kind of get right into it, Laux, Florida State fans in general haven't seen this in a while for basketball. I guess you could go back to the COVID year when they were good and then the tournament got canceled. That team was good, but since then, it's kind of been nothing, right? Like, it's been on and off. They've had good stretches, but nothing really consistent. And now Luke Laux comes in, and a young guy who knows how to talk to kids and can do all that stuff. Just what has been your views of Luke Laux's first year so far on the recruiting trail and even through one game or these expedition games?
Yeah, I think it's been really impressive. I think that obviously there's a pretty decent undertaking, excuse me. In year one at Florida State, obviously Coach Hamilton built something great, but over time it just, ended up kind of just falling off in a lot of ways. But at least, on the court with the roster he built at first, I was like, oh, I don't know if they're, I think they were picked preseason. I think they were picked last in the ACC.
Yep.
In the preseason poll, right? They don't look that bad. Like I think I don't think there's a chance that they're going to finish last in the league. And even one guy in particular that I was impressed with, Robert McCray, the 4th. Oh my gosh. I mean, he's legit. Chauncey Wiggins is another guy, but at least on the recruiting trail, I think overall, a lot of teams aren't necessarily going the high school recruiting route anymore, but Florida State, they seem like they're kind of buying into that. Already got 3 guys committed and some pretty good players, all 4-star recruits. And I think they were getting players committed before even some teams even had 1 single commitment. They obviously have 3. So really impressed with what he's been able to do on the recruiting trail and just kind of in the early going. And I think Florida State will be back in a big way.
Yeah, and to kind of start getting into these recruits, this will be aired on November 12th. They're all expected to sign today as this airs. We'll start off with Marcus Ponder, the first one, Baby Shaq. What kind of have you seen from him? And then just throughout his recruitment when Florida State came into it, he's always said they were clearly the one pushing the most. Like, did you see that too? Or how did you see his recruitment kind of develop?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, he's already got a very deep tie with the school. One of the assistant coaches at Florida State, Gerald Gillian, is brothers with one of the co-founders of his high school that he attends and AAU program. So it was kind of like, let's keep it within the family. Florida State, I think, was really the only school that said the other schools offered him and recruited him and went after him. But, once other schools started to realize, oh, hey, there's already a tie. kind of within the family at Florida State, it was like, oh yeah, that's probably where Marcis is going to go, just for obvious reasons. But I mean, Illinois offered him. They've had a lot of success with bigs. Providence hosted him for an official visit, and he had a handful of others. Indiana offered him as well. But I think Florida State was kind of where he felt the most comfortable and just kind of made the overall most sense.
Yeah, and then we'll go over to Colin Paul. I think had some connections there, but his recruitment was kind of quiet. It felt like, to me at least. When do you think Florida State kind of came in trending there, and what do you see from Colin Paul as a player?
Well, what's interesting is the only other school that he visited and was seriously considering was Loyola Chicago, which is a mid-major school, but they're a really good program in the A-10. I think he was trending pretty heavily there before Florida State decided to make a big push for him, and obviously was able to land his commitment. But he's a guy that kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but really big-time defender, and got really good length and size and athleticism. I think he'll be a good piece for Florida State as well. But he was just one that they kind of said, like, hey, we really want you. I know you've kind of went down the road with Loyola Chicago a little bit, but they were able to, I think, get him committed right after his or on campus when he visited FSU.
Yeah, then the third, Brandon Bass Jr., obviously NBA connections there with Laux. Mm-hmm. What did that kind of play into it, and what else do you think played into that one?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously his dad, a great player. I remember him with the Celtics, namely Brandon Bass Sr., and obviously Laux coming from the NBA, and I'm sure Brandon Bass Jr.'s dream and aspiration is being in the NBA. And that can be said for any of these players. Almost every college basketball player would love to play in the NBA or play professionally. So there's already an in-house pitch. It's like, hey, Laux is like, hey, I've been in the NBA. Like, I've coached some probably your guys' favorite players, right? And I've been around the game. Like, I know what, like his pitch to them. I know what an NBA player looks like. I know how to develop them, and I've been there and I've done that. So I think with Brandon Bass Jr. specifically, with his recruitment, I think it ultimately came down to them and Purdue. And he also was considering LSU and a couple other schools. I think UCF as well. But I think ultimately, like him being an Orlando kid, just kind of staying home, and I think he believes in what Florida State basketball can be in this rebuild, and wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, and you went into that, what kind of Laux's pitch looks like. We've seen that a lot with, we can get you to the NBA. At ACC tip-off, you had him call Steph Curry in front of all the cameras. That got some people excited, but it's in general, obviously they were involved in so many other kids other than these three commitments. Kevin Thomas was one they were down to the wire with, but obviously he went to LSU. Overall, just from in general, talking to all these kids, what has been the return, or what has been like the talking points about Luke Laux and this new staff? Have you seen kids really excited about it, even though obviously didn't ultimately choose Florida State, but what has been the kind of message?
Yeah, I think part of it is Florida State's overall tradition with all the success in the NBA players that they have. I think them, also them being nationally prominent for several years. And like I said, obviously tapered off, but some want to be part of that rebuilding process. Those that kind of be even viewed as the underdog. And then also the ability to play in the ACC, a very rich basketball conference. And then I think the biggest point of all is the head coach in Luke Laux is playing for an NBA coach. And like I said, all these players aspire of playing in the NBA. So I think that's probably the biggest selling point is Laux coming from. I think there wouldn't be as much recruiting success if Florida State decided to just hire somebody that was just already in college. But since Laux is coming from the NBA, I think that just gives an extra incentive for some of these players to sign up to be a Nole.
Yeah, then I guess we talked about the team at the beginning of the show, or the beginning of the segment a little bit. You mentioned Rob McCray. Did you watch some of that game, or did you just see the stats he broke the school record for assists. I don't think anyone really expected him to do that. Talk more about Rob McCray if you want, or what other pieces of this Florida State team you see, and how do you think you said they're not going to finish last in the ACC, even though a lot of them haven't picked for that. What do you think of this team in general?
So I watched their exhibition against Alabama.
Yep.
That's the first time I saw Florida State. That's the only game I've watched them play. But I knew who Robert McCray was. Like, I'm familiar with some of these players on this roster. Like, obviously watched Chauncey Wiggins at Clemson last year. Like, he's already familiar with the league. So I think I was a little bit familiar with them, but I was kind of like going in with an open mind. I was like, okay, like this is a good test playing Alabama, obviously. Has had a lot of success in the last few years, but at least with Robert McCray specifically, just his feel for the game, his strength, his passing ability, like his athleticism, like he plays hard. Like I love play. Like that's one of those things that you don't necessarily like. You can play hard no matter how much skill level you have. And it always frustrates me when players like don't want to play hard. Like that's the one thing you can do no matter what else. If all else fails, you can play hard. So I love that about him. And then like Chauncey Wiggins' ability to stretch the floor. Even a guy like Kobe McGee, who's had some moments like in that exhibition game against Alabama. I know it was a couple weeks ago, but they gave him a game. It was close almost the entire game in that exhibition. So really like the makings of this team and what they might look like. And it's for the most part, they got a lot of young guys on the roster. So hopefully they'll be able to retain them and continue rebuilding, FSU basketball.
Yeah, that's the goal, I think, from talking to people of like Cam Miles, Toma, the song. We learned his name is pronounced Toma, but from Luke on Tuesday. Okay. But yeah, I mean, in general, I guess going towards the future, are there any 2027 kids off the top of your head that Florida State's involved with that may have a chance with down the road here soon?
2027 guys, I think there's like a handful, I don't know who all they're like actually serious about at this point.
Yeah.
I think there's a guy like Lincoln Cosby is a guy that they have an offer out to. Like he's kind of like one of those typical big guards. Like he's like a 6'9" wing that like a guy that like Leonard Hamilton would love. He's got some pretty high level recruitment. He's the first one that comes to mind. I think as Caden Daughtry is another guy at Calvary Christian. I believe he was teammates with one of the fellow FSU commitments in Colin Paul. Yep. So there's already a connection there, them being friends and teammates. But I think kind of as next summer begins, there'll be a little bit more uptick in the 2027 class. But for the most part, it's very early interest there.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Thank you, Joe, again for coming on.
Sure.
Warchant TV debut, our signing day special. Florida State's best class in a while. So it was fun. Thank you again. And we got to have you on soon once everything else starts getting rolling.
No, absolutely. Appreciate you having me, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Our thanks to Jeff for conducting the interview to start the show. Obviously, Jamie Shaw for his insights on the national front, Ira Schoffel, and then, of course, Joe Tipton. Matt's interview with Joe just concluding now. All right, Matt, here we go. You were on the road last night in Gainesville as we record this. This is going to be an interesting season right here, right now, and they're only going to get better from this point moving forward. You can kind of feel that energy around the basketball program. I know you've been there in the building, the training facilities, and Coach Lauk's office. What has it been like for you, and what can people expect to see from this group now that they know all the guys that are coming in down the line for next season?
Yeah, I thought, and I said in my preview, I think last week, that I thought they were a bubble team to begin with. It's hard to judge this team from a national standpoint, and why they were picked last by a lot of people to finish last in the ACC is because it's a lot of unknowns, right? I get the privilege to be there all the time and see practices, but most people don't get that. So it's really hard to judge a team when you have a bunch of mid-major guys who no one's really seen, outside of Chauncey Wiggins, right? So, but they've proven now at this point, you've hung with Alabama in an expedition. You were leading at that game at half, and you were leading UF at half too in a real game. So this team is not going to finish last in the ACC. They're going to be fun to watch. If the ACC is as bad as it was last year, they're going to compete in the ACC, in my opinion, right? Like that's not too far-fetched. And again, playing UF on paper, how big they are compared to this team, because they don't have a true big. That's their one weakness. On paper, you should be able to just throw it to your big guy in the middle if you're UF, and you just keep laying it up over and over again.
Yep.
But what was really impressive last night was the defense. Those buckets were not easy for UF. Now, the rebounding was the only part that they kind of missed out on, and that goes to the size, and that's going to happen with this team. But, they proved that their one weakness, what should be their one weakness matchup wise, isn't as big of a weakness as we thought. And they can hang with these guys and they can play. Credit to Chauncey Wiggins and Alex Steen, even though Alex Steen fouled out. They played hard in the paint there. And none of those shots were easy. A lot of them were actually missed. It was just, and Florida State's, I think, still got more second chance points than UF, which is wild from watching that game to see that. But they're going to compete, man. They'll probably beat one of these teams they're not supposed to. I'm not going to go out and say they're going to beat Houston, who's the number one team, but you got a Texas A&M, you got Dayton, you got all these Georgia, Clemson, Duke. Like, they're going to win one or two of those just off of their style. And what I was impressed with last night is they didn't shoot the three well, right? It was Laux even said post game that they took it away. But when you have a guy like McCray, whose strength, in my opinion, is being able to go drive the paint hard and his athleticism around the rim to figure out a way to get it in the bucket, that's what proved to be your strong suit last night. And I know you talked about it and you were interested in it of, why did he drive there when they were only down 2 instead of popping it out and getting a 3-point shot for the lead? But at that point, that was their strength. And it's fun to see that they can really do a lot more than we thought.
It's extremely encouraging because, and this is as Laux said as he sat down for the postgame presser last night, he said, "Woof, they got some big guys right there."
Yeah.
It's their length. They extended out and they denied the 3-point shot because they're just such a large team. You're not going to run into a group like Florida very often that's that athletic, that can extend out and deny you what you want, which are quick shots in the 3-point game. And so Florida State's number one option of what they want to do, quick possessions, hoist it up early. They weren't able to do that, and yet by the end of the game, they're hanging in there with Florida with a chance to win. And you go, how the hell does that happen? Well, that's the encouraging part. I think that's where it gets really, really exciting here. And McCray, for his part, I thought he played a horrible first half in terms of the turnovers, but he stayed the course. He showed the toughness. And when Florida State gave up that giant run in the second half yesterday, they didn't panic. I think it was an 11-2 run. They didn't panic. They right back into it. By the time you get into the final couple minutes of the game, Florida State is then competing for a chance to win. I think you're right. They're going to score some upsets here. And I feel better. I thought maybe they might lose a few games, Matt, against teams that they have no business losing to. I got to tell you, watching them last night operate without the number one part of what they want to be, which is speed on offense, quick possessions, and 3-pointers, Florida took that away largely, and yet they were still in it. That's an extremely encouraging sign, helped also by, I think, what Florida State did at the free throw line. So there it is. A lot of energy around the program. Stay tuned to warchant.com for all of the in-depth coverage regarding Florida State basketball, Florida State basketball recruiting. Sign up right now. It's just $1. It's the largest FSU fan community in the business. And I know we talk about football for the most part, and it's exciting because there might be some changes coming in the next month to the next 6 weeks. The changes already happened at Florida State, and it looks like it's bearing positive fruit. So format for everybody involved in today's program, we say thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. Make sure to hit the thumbs up, subscribe to Warchant TV. That's free. Head over to warchant.com for more insights. Matt, really appreciate the heavy lift. You did some great work on this project, and we look forward to hearing more from you on Florida State basketball.
Yep, and it was fun. I like helping good people, and everyone on this staff, or like promoting good people, and everyone on this basketball staff is great to work with and great to talk to.